This podcast is brought to you by Chapelure Media. Does your website need an update? Is social media working for your business? If you need digital media help, Chapelure Media is here for you. Web design, social media, graphics, digital strategy. They do that. Visit chapeluremedia.com to find out more. Welcome to The Dots, a podcast about connecting. The Dots is a series of conversations with artists, community leaders, entrepreneurs, and changemakers who talk about how they connect the dots and bring things together for their communities, companies, and themselves for a better life. And now your host, digital strategist, speaker, and entrepreneur, Kathleen Butchko.
Linda Scheel experienced trauma with the loss of both her daughter and son. She channeled this loss into a renewed focus on health and the future. Now she's aging in reverse. Linda, welcome to The Dots.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the obvious, Linda. How old are you?
76.
You're amazing. So
Thank you.
Besides the obvious loss of your children, which can change the trajectory of anyone's life, tell me about your journey. You've owned several businesses.
I have. I started my own business. I actually came from living in Syracuse, raised my children, and moved to Florida in 1989. And I started my first business there. It was a food brokerage company. And I traveled extensively with that business. And I was pretty successful until there was a recall, which of course is death in the food industry.
Yeah.
And during that time is when my daughter passed away. And a couple of years later, my son did. And you know, trauma's got a way of just changing you. I mean, your whole perspective on life changes. And I don't know about you, but throughout my life, because it's been, fairly long up to this point, there's so many intuitions that told me to go to the right way, and I went the left. It took me a while to get on course. But after the children passed, then I changed my thinking, my feeling. There's a saying by Wayne Dyer, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's exactly what happened to me. I started in another business. It was an organic wine company. And I did that for 5 years. And during that time, I was taking yoga lessons. I'd always been very active. And that after the end of the 5 years, I closed the business and decided to become a yoga teacher. This is about how I started all my businesses. It was sort of like, I think I'll do that now. And then I figure out how I'm going to do it.
And so many people are afraid to do that. So I find that sheer act alone incredibly empowering, to have the strength to say, okay, I'm going to, as you said, go right.
Right. And believe me, it's not always easy to go right because it's not the way I want to go, but I knew it was the right way to go. So I started teaching yoga. I became certified in 4 yogas: cancer yoga, which my sister had just gotten a diagnosis of breast cancer, and restorative yoga, chair yoga, and a hatha yoga called Samporna. It was pretty amazing to me because when I went through that, getting certified, I lived at an ashram for 6 weekends, and that totally changed my life too. There's so many interesting things that have happened since that time. I became certified when I was 73, and I'm 76. So I have worked in addiction centers, which was really dear to my heart. It gave me a sense of peace, if that makes sense, after losing 2 children to addictions. I have to tell you a story. There was a boy in my class, and he was covered head to toe with tattoos, and he had always wore sunglasses. And at the end of his stay, which was normally about 30 days, he always sat up front, and he came up front. And at the end of every one of my classes, I teach a meditation called Yoga Nidra. And they all lay down, some fall asleep. And then at the end of the class, they wipe their mats and leave. And at the end of this class, he never moved. So I thought, well, maybe he'd fallen asleep. And I went over to him and I tapped him on his shoulder and I said, John, are you okay? And he very slowly started to get up and he took his sunglasses off. And I was shocked, and I didn't want him to see this because where his eye was supposed to be, there was a hole there. And he said to me, do you know the part of the meditation where you say, imagine a wave passing down through your body that carries away your fears? He said, I felt the wave. I felt the wave go through my body, and tears are streaming down his face. So I said to him, John, there are so many things in this world we don't understand, but I do know if you lead with your heart, good things will happen to you. And he left and I never saw him again. But those type of instances are so humbling and makes me know that I'm on the right path to where I should be.
That is an incredibly powerful story. And how does that motivate you at this point? How do those type of insights?
Well, there has been several stories. That probably is the most, kind of really moving story. But I've had several. I had a woman in a yoga class. She had 2 strokes, and this was a chair yoga class, and she would come in, and this is just recently. She would come in and her husband would bring her in and sit her down. And she apparently had been doing yoga for 40 years, but she could hardly speak. And she would sit there in the class and tears were streaming down her face. So I would go over and I would hold her and I would tell her it's fine and I would help her. And at the end of every class, she was smiling and laughing. That is so powerful. How can you not be motivated by something like that? I have another woman. I'm sorry, I've got a few stories. I have another woman that she's 88. And at the end of last year, I teach her during season here in Florida. And the end of last year, she answered the door and she yelled at me, it's a miracle, it's a miracle. And I'm going, what's a miracle? And she said, my back, whatever you did last week, all these years of back pain went away and it never came back. So these are the things that motivate me. I make a difference, however small or whatever. And this is why my passion is to go speak. And I do a lot of speaking now. I'm doing a lot more of it.
So tell me the secrets to aging in reverse, because I've seen you, and although this is audio, it's an amazing, you do not look anything close to what we would envision as 76.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your energy and your enthusiasm pours out of virtually every pore.
Thank you.
And your life has not been without challenges, obviously. But what advice would you give someone who's faced with challenges?
It's very interesting because to tell somebody, oh, don't worry, get over it, or think positive, or, those sound very trite. So what I try and do, and I teach 5-year yoga classes, chair yoga, and I do a lot of speaking at senior centers and cancer centers where people have challenges, lots of them. First, I try and really lead by example. I think that if I teach people, and one of the first things, and I'm not sure I said this to you, was, do you realize the amount of times that you breathe in a minute determines how long you're going to live and how healthy you're going to be? And they look at me like they don't know whether to breathe fast or slow. And
I would feel very compelled to hyperventilate at that moment.
Right, absolutely. And then I tell them the right way to breathe, which is through your nose and out your nose. But when I teach, I'm also speaking and giving a talk to my class. This morning I had a great class. It was a regular class. I had three people in their 80s in this class, and they're down on the floor doing all kinds of difficult poses. They've been in my class for 3 years. This, I think, is part of it. You know, I can do it. Well, she can do it. Why can't I do it? She's older than I am, or whatever. I think that helps. But I also think that if you tell somebody, look, you have 70,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are negative, and you have the same thoughts the next day and the next day. So when you get these thoughts, write down 5 things that make you very happy. What are 5 memories that you've had in your life that really, really resonate with you and make you happy? And when you get in these funky moods or you're down and depressed, look at them, smile, turn your mouth up. Your brain doesn't know the difference. You'll still get the dopamine. Breathe.
It
Does that
does
make any
make sense,
sense?
and it seems so simple. And that's the one thing that we've tried to explore a little bit on the dots, is that through that simplicity of connection, you can make a difference not only in the lives of others, but certainly in your own life.
When I'm teaching or talking about aging, you know, one of the things I ask is, do you let your age define you? And I tell them by that, what I mean is, you know, when you're little, they say, oh, you can't do that, you're too young. And when you get old, they say, oh, you can't do that, you're too old. You know, you can do it. You can do it. And so many people don't realize how easy it is to get healthier. And there's only 5 things really that are really, really important. And science backs, I take everything, even though I'm a yogi and all of yogis have been doing all of this for many thousands of years. I always have everything I talk about backed by science, because there are many people that feel comfortable with that. So the first thing is exercise. You have to move. You have to move. And the second thing is actually your breathing. You need to deep breathe. It oxygenates all 100 trillion of your cells. And without that deep breathing, your cells are not going to detox, and you're going to age faster. So deep breathing, even if it's only a couple of minutes a day through your nose, deep breathing and out, it will help really oxygenate all those cells. So that's really, really important to me. And also, if you breathe deep like that for a minute every hour, you reduce your stress by 40%. That's that's unbelievable. So when I'm talking and telling these people these things, you can see and feel the difference. I was told when I went to teach some of these senior centers and assisted living, look, don't feel bad if they walk out on you, because I talk for an hour, because they don't have much of an attention span. I said, not a problem.
The world tells you you only have 18 minutes or less.
Yes, and they don't, right, exactly. And I said, not a problem. If they need to leave for any reason, absolutely. In the 3 years that I have been giving talks, no one has ever left my class or my speech, because I teach on such a simple level. Your mind has tremendous control over your body, tremendous control over your body. And what you think, this is true. You are what you think, you are what you eat. Which gets me back to the third thing, nutrition. Nutrition is extremely, extremely important. I was actually had some issues health-wise, and they started about 6 months ago, but I just keep going. I'm teaching classes and I'm going. And I got what's called uveitis in my eye. I'd never heard of it. And it's an inflammation in the cornea. And the doctor said to me, do you have rheumatoid arthritis? And I went, no. Well, what about lupus? And I said, why are you asking me these questions? And he said, well, usually uveitis leads to some autoimmune disease. So I said, okay. So he said, if this doesn't go away, we'll do blood work. So I decided to go to my own doctor and have her do the blood work, which she did. And it came back positive for scleroderma. Now, I didn't know what scleroderma was, and she said to me, don't go looking it up on the internet.
Right.
And I said, okay, I won't. So I really didn't. And I told a few people, and one of the few people was a friend of mine who was a doctor, and she said, oh my God, Linda, you can die from that. I said, oh, this is great. I didn't know that. So anyway, what I did is I have a fellow that I go to. He's an energy guy. And for 5 years, anything wrong in my body, he's giving me supplements. They're actually food pills from Standard Processing, who's been in business since 1920s. And they're food pills, and they, give you what you're missing in your body and make you more healthy. So there was a protocol for scleroderma. But she said to me, I want you to make an appointment to verify this with a rheumatologist. So I decided to go to the best one there was in South Florida, and I called the Cleveland Clinic and got the head of the rheumatology department. And so it takes 2 months to get in there. So in a couple of weeks, I will be going back. Meanwhile, are you familiar with functional medicine?
I am.
Good. Okay. I am very into functional medicine, which for maybe some of your listeners might not realize what that is, but what it actually is finding, instead of giving you a pill to take away the pain, or they actually find the root cause of the disease. So they go back and they try and find, okay, what are you eating? What's causing this? Because what they're finding out now is that most illnesses are caused by nutrition. Unfortunately, in the 90s, when everything started changing with GMOs and all kinds of things and pesticides putting in our food, it changed our bodies. So I went on a diet and no gluten, because my energy guy had said to me, Linda, you're gluten sensitive. That was 5 years ago. Do you think I stopped gluten? Of course not. I'm eating sandwiches, chips, whatever. I stopped all gluten. I stopped all sugar, which is terrible for your brain. I stopped all dairy. And so I drink almond milk and no alcohol, which for somebody that owned a wine company was a little more difficult. No alcohol, no caffeine. And now I'm having a lot of vegetables, fruit, and I can eat meat. I don't eat a lot of it, but I can eat meat for protein. And I am finding that the symptoms that I had, my uveitis, I went on Monday and he said, Linda, I think it's gone. And all the symptoms that I had with my back issues are still there, but they've lessened. So I'm hoping by the time I go to see this doctor that it's going to be a very small diagnosis of something. But I did go see my dermatologist just for my yearly checkup, and he looked at me and he said, you haven't got one single sign of scleroderma in your body. I see nothing. So, things like this happen in your lives, and you just move ahead and you deal with it. And I'm so blessed in so many ways that I do that. I did it with the children. I did it when I fell through the ceiling in my garage and broke the ball of my hip in half. That wasn't very pretty. But in my life, this is the way I tend to move forward. We don't have yesterday. It's gone. And tomorrow isn't even here. Our life is now. It is right now. And this is where we need to look at nature, smell the roses, feel really, really good about the good things. Be grateful. Not upset about what you don't have, but be grateful for what you do have.
Linda, thank you so much for sharing your journey and certainly how you are aging in reverse.
You are so welcome. So welcome.
The Dots is produced by Chapelure Media. Follow The Dots Podcast on our website at thedotspodcast.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and see how all of the dots connect on our Instagram account. Please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. This podcast is part of the Chapelure Media Network.